The 18th of September. I'm Stephen Ridgway, and many thanks to uh, Rich Benfield for looking after the daily briefing whilst I was away. So let's get stuck in. There is a new piece of malware targeting Mac devices known as MetaStealer. It has been recently seen and investigated by Sentinel-1, and is very much aimed at targeting Macs, but targeting Intel-based Macs. Apparently, this particular malware doesn't infect M1 and M2 machines unless those machines are using Rosetta, in which case there are ways of which is, I think, a way of emulating Intel or running Intel code on M1 Macs. The Stealer is it does the usual sorts of things from the point of view of what it collects, but the thing to be aware of is that it is aimed mainly at Mac business users. The phishing emails that deliver the malware are mimicking fake clients, droppers with official, very official looking attachments, contracts, invoices, those sorts of things. They're actually password protected zip files that contain the malware in a disk image format. And occasionally the malware's been seen to impersonate Adobe Photoshop installer and other Adobe files as well. So watch out for these. Apparently, Apple's XProtect update v2170 does have detection for this, but not sure quite how prevalent that particular update is out there. So do be wary of this if you're using an Intel-based Mac. If you receive official looking documents, but you're not expecting them, treat with suspicion, as always. So yeah, one to watch out for. Cloud security is something that I know we've spoken quite a bit about over the last few months on the daily briefing. There remains a feeling that if your data's in the cloud, well, you're kind of safe from ransomware. But I think those of us that work on the defensive side know that isn't necessarily true, although it is a widely held belief. Just to kind of highlight the point that data stored in cloud environments can be attacked and can be encrypted with ransomware. The Black Cat ransomware gang is using stolen Microsoft accounts to use the Sphinx encryptor to target and encrypt Azure cloud storage. So complex-ish series of events is the in order to deliver this particular piece of malware. But the example that they use is where the one-time password was intercepted via information from the LastPass leak. So basically then, having gained access to the Microsoft account, the team are able to then use the Sphinx encryptor tooling in order to encrypt data held in the cloud. So this sort of attack is more common than people realize, and it's associated with things like data leaking via APIs and This week, an affiliate of this particular gang claimed an attack on MGM resorts, using similar sorts of techniques. So there's a lot going on out there. Just be careful. Don't assume that your cloud data is safe. There are tools out there which will aim to compromise your cloud data, because you know that's an area where I think there's a lack of understanding in how to secure things at the moment. So the usual protections are, the best way to start. Make sure that you do have good authentication. Make sure that if you are managing your passwords through a password manager, that you keep on top of any breaches with the password manager and go back and change all passwords and reset 2FA if you're using 2FA through your password manager. There is an argument to say that you probably shouldn't be using the same provider for your password manager and your one-time passwords, because then a single breach is liable, or has a high potential to allow access via um, to allow access, via one breach, giving you access to stuff, even if it's one-time password protected. So watch out for that. There's an interesting piece of legislation that is working its way through in California. I'm sure we're all aware of the fact that in certain parts of the world, whilst there are very good data protection laws, in other parts of the world, your personal data can be quite legally it's sold on by what are called data brokers. So basically, all sorts of information, everything from the names, addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, gender, age, marital status, income, political preferences, what houses you own, all these sorts of things do tend to get swept up. And so, including things like your location, using mobile phone location data, these sorts of things. Well, in the States, there are very few laws at a federal level that restrict what can be done with the data once it's been collected, and so there is a booming industry of data brokers that will buy particular bits of data and bring it together with other bits of data and then sell it on to people. In California, they have had a law which gives consumers the rights to ask the data brokers to delete any data that they hold. The flaw with this is you have to do it broker by data broker, and it is fair to say that the data brokers don't make it easy for you to comply with their requirements around the request, and also it doesn't prevent them from recapturing all the data as soon as it's been deleted. So um, there is an amendment or an updated version of this law, which is going through, being known as the Delete Act, which would, as they say, establish a one-stop shop where individuals could order hundreds of data brokers registered in the state to delete their personal data and to cease acquiring and selling it in the future, all via a single portal with a single request. I think it's a very interesting approach, and as we've seen, when jurisdiction in an important area such as California, when that comes into play, same with GDPR and the European Union, other jurisdictions will take note and start adjusting what they're doing based on this sort of stuff. So it will undoubtedly go some way towards limiting abuse of data through data brokers. May not always, there are the potential for unexpected consequences, especially in the area of data sharing for law enforcement and so on and so forth. So presumably there will be in there some checks and balances to ensure that these things are actually okay. But it's an interesting one. I think it's one that we can keep an eye on because, as I say, these sorts of laws have a tendency to spread in one form or another from one place to another. And then finally, from me today, an article in Info Security magazine has highlighted some work from Palo Alto's Unit 42, um, as, uh, summarizing the latest attack surface threat research. Um, it is apparently now clear that 80% of security vulnerabilities within organizations across all sectors, the vulnerabilities are based in a cloud environment. Okay, I think that is it surprising? No, I don't think it is that surprising, really. I think partly because the uptake of cloud is huge, and there isn't the maturity of vulnerability management in the cloud is not in the same place as it is for on-prem or colo or whatever systems. I think one thing though which is of interest is that 45% of those cloud vulnerabilities are based on cloud-hosted services that were not present in the organization's attack surface a month prior. So basically what we're saying is, yes, okay, it's great cloud service providers introduce new features, updates, changes, more functionality, you name it, almost continually. But if you marry up that with the fact that 80% of vulnerabilities are found in cloud environments one way or another, and nearly half of those vulnerabilities appear on a kind of rolling month by month basis. It is I continue to believe that it is very difficult to keep on top of what your cloud provider is actually doing, and there have been some quite significant breaches in the not that distant past, based around the fact that cloud providers have made changes to things or introduced services, and those services have introduced new vulnerabilities that have then been exploited. So the only way to keep on top of this really is to, well, yes, okay, you need to maintain, there's some good advice here, maintain comprehensive real-time understanding of all your internet accessible assets. Yep. Easier said than done, but agreed. Regularly review and update cloud configurations aligning to best practices. Again, possible, hard work, but possible to do. Foster collaboration between security and DevOps teams to secure cloud native applications. DevSecOps, which my business partner Eliza has over the years spent a lot of time talking about DevSecOps. It's good. So long as it isn't just giving security to DevOps, giving them a new title and a pay rise, as long as there is some real interaction between the teams, then it's a good approach. But basically, make sure that security is being taken seriously by developments and operations people is important. And then focus on the most critical vulnerabilities and exposures. Well, that's yes, you can spend a lot of time tracking down vulnerabilities. Most things fairly rapidly get a common vulnerability scoring system score, CVSS score. And there are other things which are slightly newer, sort of exploit prediction scoring systems, so on and so forth. So keeping on top of those is important, but I think mainly understanding what components you have in the cloud, how important those components are to your business, and understanding that from a business risk perspective, as least as much as from a cyber risk perspective is extremely important. And then, yeah, try to keep on top of what your cloud providers are doing in the way of introducing new services. Um, and keep on top of the news around whether any vulnerabilities have been discovered in those systems as well. So, you know, it is a difficult task, but not an impossible one to do. And again, if you get the basic cyber hygiene right, you will at least minimise the attack surface to only those things that have changed recently, which at least allows you to focus in on any remediation or mitigation steps. So that is all from me for today. I hope you all have a great start to the week, and I will speak to you all again tomorrow morning.